So, good evening, everyone, again, for all those who joined, and welcome to one more session of PM Vrita, the Refresher Sessions. This is our ninth session, and last week we did not have a session. I was not physically well, and sorry, we could not have the session last week. Apologies. This week, I know it's a long weekend. We had Friday holiday, October 2nd. Um, but anyway, I thought let's not break the cycle. Let's have it on Sundays as usual. That gives everyone the opportunity to join. And we are recording this session. I have started the recording, and as I was saying, let's hope this recording is proper. At the end of the session, I can upload it to YouTube. So in this session 9, many of you through our WhatsApp group had requested multiple topics, but many of you were inclined towards one topic, which is about the tools and techniques that we use. So in this session, we will talk not only about one knowledge area or one topic, rather all the tools and techniques. We'll do it in 2 or 3 sessions. So this is the first in that session series, sub-series, I would say, where we discuss the tools and techniques that are used in the PMP examination in PMBOK. So if you guys are, I think many of you are already aware. So just please join the WhatsApp group so that you get regularly updated on the future sessions, and also please subscribe to this channel PM Vrita so that you get information on uh, the past videos. All the video recordings are there, especially made videos are there, and please like the videos, share widely so everyone knows and they get benefited, and subscribe to the channel. So thank you very much for your patronage. So this week we'll be starting with a mini series, as we said, on tools and techniques. I do not have one definite way of doing it. As I mentioned in our group, I do not have any slides. I did not, and I do not want to prepare specially slides for tools and techniques. Instead, we will have it more like a free-flowing discussion, casual discussion, and we will, of course, discuss the tools and techniques in a set order. I will show you in what order we will discuss this. And this session would be an interactive session, meaning please feel free to stop me then and there. Let's not have just one question and answer session at the end. Rather, let us have an interactive session where then and there, when you have questions on the particular tool or technique, or even the related input and output that we are discussing for that particular process or knowledge area, please feel free to share your opinion, share your experience. Not only questions and answers, because I don't see you only as students who ask questions. I also want you to share your own thoughts, share your own experiences and knowledge, because this series in PM Vrita, PMP Refresher Sessions, we assume that all of you guys are not actually new to PMP. You are already preparing PMP for the PMP examination, and or towards various stages of preparation. Some of you are very close to writing the examination, and I see that sometimes people who already have finished PMP examination also join this because it's also for them as a refresher. So I know that you guys are not completely new to PMP, so please feel free to share your own ideas, knowledge, awareness, experience, everything of whatever we are discussing, so that we add value to this session. So it's not one Bowen who is just ranting along, right? One way monologue. Rather, it's an interactive session. So with this, let's go to the base document that we would use in this session. As I said before we started, Ricardo Vargas, Brightline Institute. So Ricardo Vargas is very famous, and through many years he has been sharing his own way of expressing the process charts, right? The process groups, the knowledge areas, the processes in inflow, outflow, and everything, which has helped generations of PMP exam takers. Uh, Amazingly, I was one of the beneficiaries of his. I was one of the beneficiaries of his process charts. So I will share again a link, or even this document itself, what you're seeing, Ricardo Vargas's process flow chart, plus a link to his YouTube channel, and especially those couple of videos where he has used these charts as a base and talked over a period of 60 minutes. I think in 1 hour he has explained beautifully all these processes, how they flow in and flow out. My recommendation is, if you have the possibility of printing this in color in A0, because he has two versions. One is A0 version, another is the A3 version. I can show both. Just a minute. So what you see here is the A0 version, that's a bit more detailed on A0 paper, right? It has all the ITTOs and everything mentioned. We also have the A3 version, which is slightly smaller. It does not have all the ITTOs, but at a high level, it has the flows, the things. Yeah, okay, what you're seeing now is the A3 version. It only has the process names and what flows in where, what is connected, and everything. So I will share this A0 and A3 versions on our WhatsApp group, and I will also on the same group share the link to the YouTube videos of Ricardo Vargas. So the way we can actually go through this session is, I was thinking let's go process group wise, that's phases wise rather than knowledge area, because generally what we learn is knowledge area by knowledge area. You attend a PMP session from a chapter, or you attend it somewhere else. Usually we go knowledge area by knowledge area. So let's do it in a slightly different way, because if you see, when we talk of the word flow, it flows from one place to another place, or it flows from one phase to another phase. It flows from one process to another. That means there's a sequence already given. And when you use the word sequence, usually we think of process group or phases. So I believe that it is an even better way if we go phase by phase or process group by process group and discuss these ITTOs. It makes more sense because the output of one process flows in and as an input to another process. And though we are not going to discuss inputs and outputs, we discuss mainly tools and techniques, the same sequence would be really good. I hope this is a better way for you to put in context the various uh, I would say processes. And let's start with, for example, the initiating. So stop me wherever you have questions or you want to share opinions. So let me try to blow this up a little bit. So can someone tell me what are the 5 process groups we have in PMP examination? Very basic question. Anyone?
Initiating,
Mm-hmm.
planning,
Planning,
executing, monitoring
executing,
and control, and
and
closing the project.
beautiful, in that order. Of course, you know that executing, monitoring, and controlling, these two are not really in sequence, they go parallelly. But of course, please remember, as I repeatedly tell you in many sessions, uh, sometimes it's easy to get this question when everything goes in parallel. How come an output that appears later in the process, how can it be used as an input today? The idea is you don't do everything in a real sequence. The version 0, the so-called rolling wave planning, version 0 of all the plans, all the documents you create sort of at the same time, right? And fluidly they interact with each other. So at any given time, it's not that you have nothing. So some one version of some document or the other is already available when you do the earliest version of some other document. So, and later, once you have frozen the version 0, then you enter the executing phase, and then the knowledge and the information that becomes available simply because you have started executing or simply because time has passed, that is being used to feed back into your planning itself or your executing, to improve or to remove the deviations between the plan and the actuals. So that's how basically we flow through. And as you know, we have 10 knowledge areas, so total of 49 processes spread across the 5 process groups and the 10 knowledge areas of PMP. In initiating, the beginning of everything is you create the project charter. So when you're developing the project charter, basically, uh, you are at the very beginning of the project. So in this sub series on tools and techniques, we are not going to see only the tools and techniques, we will also see some insights about the particular process that engages these tools and techniques, to put that into context, to look at the history, what happens before, what is expected to happen in the future after this process occurs, so that it's not just another reading out the slide. Rather, I want you to understand and internalize this information. Internalizing means you don't have to mug up or memorize things ever again. You will understand in what phase or in what situation of the project you find yourselves in as you're executing these processes, so that you can internally get some sort of map what this tools and technique could be, why this tool and technique is used, and how this tool and technique is used. Because sometimes similar tools and techniques are used for different purposes. For example, you could use a Ishikawa diagram, right? Fishbone diagram, either to identify the risks. You can also use it to identify various quality issues that can occur. So the same tool and technique for multiple purposes you will be using. So whenever we come across those tools and techniques, we will see it only once. The first time it is used, and second time we will just give a hint and move on. And whatever time permits today in our 1 hour, 1.5 hours, we will look at those processes. So when we start with initiating, developing the project charter, that comes first. All of you know that project charter is technically the first document in the project, but when you are developing the project charter, the project per se does not exist. The project manager does not exist. The project charter is basically the Bible or the Genesis document that brings into life the project and brings into existence a project manager. As you know, the project sponsor basically is accountable for making the project charter. He or she may actually engage the help of the potential probable future project manager to write it. So responsibility may lie with the project manager. Still, the project manager will be writing this charter, but at the end of the day, the sponsor is accountable for ensuring the project charter comes into existence. In this project charter, high-level information about the project is there. For example, what are the high level objectives, high level timelines, high level budget, a very rough list of stakeholders, high level risks, for example, that are at the business level, at a big project level, not individual to any activity. And some of the constraints will be mentioned, and do's, don'ts. Quite a lot of information is there. And the most important thing that you see in a project charter is the project manager being named. So it names the project manager, and the project manager is given the authority to utilize the resources of the organization to deliver what is expected from the contract and the project charter. And tools and techniques. So we will not talk about inputs and outputs. We will talk about tools and techniques. Expert judgment. In fact, in many sessions, we skip across this. We think expert judgment basically means that's exactly what it is, judgment from experts. So, very easy to walk past this. So expert judgment is also a very interesting thing, because to even to do expert judgment, you must actually feed back into something else, which basically is identifying stakeholders. Always I tell people, see, identifying stakeholders is really so important. It should happen right at the beginning of the project and repeatedly and proactively. The project manager should not have any trigger. Only with the trigger, I will be identifying my stakeholders. Sorry, that's the wrong thing. Of course, there are triggers whenever a new person joins, whenever new information comes on the project, whenever a new phase starts, whenever a new deliverables requested, whenever a change request comes. That could be triggers like this. But even without a trigger, it is a project manager's job to continuously look at stakeholders, because if you don't know whom to talk to about anything, you will not talk to those people and you will not get the answers. So even this expert judgment basically comes from having understood who your stakeholders are. Of course, the project charter goes to a very good extent in listing a high level list of stakeholders, but then to write the project charter itself, what expert judgment you will have, because at this moment you're not had the project charter, so there's no project charter telling you a high level list of stakeholders. You're not identified the stakeholders. So where from these experts come? How can you use expert judgment to make so-called document zero in the project, which basically starts the project off? Can anyone answer this? You don't even know where the experts are. No one is named. How can you use expert judgment as a tool here? What's the meaning of this expert judgment here? Anyone?
Project sponsors opinion or something.
Partly, yes. Yes, that's a good one. What else?
Could you repeat the
Sorry?
question?
Hey, your voice is really breaking. We are not able to understand you. Hello? You can also type actually if your uh, connection is not good. See, projects. We say, what is the definition of a project? A project is a temporary endeavor. It has a start and an end. It also produces a unique service or product or result. That's a project. All of you know the definition of a project as PMBOK states. But do you think every organization is going to do a project for the first ever time? Never. So you already have experience. It could be in your own domain, your industry, your own company culture, your own kinds of projects. This is not the first time you're doing. Even the so-called first of its kind projects do not really mean that the people who are working, 100% of the people working on it, that's the first ever time they are doing a project in their career. So that means every organization has already some experience, either by its culture or by the people working in the projects, has some experience of having undertaken projects. So expert judgment to do this document zero does not mean, hey, there is no one who has been listed as an expert. So, and even the OPAs, organization process assets, I'm not going, I'm not able to look into this OPAs because the project has not come into existence. So I don't know whom to talk to. No, that situation will never occur, because this is where PMP basically touches upon reality. Though we have a set sequence where we start with the developing the project charter, creating a project charter, which is basically the document zero in the project. It tells us, guys, whatever PMBOK says, common sense is that every organization has some experience, some knowledge organically. The project organization or the organization grows. That means every organization has at least some people to talk to whenever a project starts, whether they are listed or not. So the experts exist in a project, in a domain, in an industry, whether or not the project charter is made. So expert judgment, by having it as a tool and technique, PMBOK assumes that organizations have at least some sort of experience having done projects before and expertise in that particular domain. So that's one basic assumption that PMBOK makes. So expert judgment is basically talking to the domain experts or process experts. It could be project management experts, it could be anyone, into understanding more information that could be fed back into the project charter. So, a project charter contains all these things what we discussed. So, the experts are the ones who are the ones who basically aid the sponsor and the project manager into saying what goes into the project charter and what not. Then comes data gathering. Data gathering has a couple of meanings. One could be to do things like interviews, questionnaires, surveys, and all those things. Or one could be reading the organizational process assets. One could be understanding the EEFs, enterprise environmental factors, like the company culture and everything. But it's a mixture of everything. Gathering data from multiple sources. It could be the sponsor himself. Sometimes the sponsor is not a single person, it's a steering committee. And that could be multiple people. Maybe one of them has taken the responsibility of being the sponsor and signing on to the project charter and various approvals in the project. So the management basically which chartered the project because of a business reason, because of a political reason, environmental reason, economic reason, social reason, legal reason, technological reason. These are the different reasons why a project is chartered. Financial is not the only thing. CSR reason. So whatever reason the project is chartered, uh, the sponsor and his team basically know why this project was chartered, and they're the best people from whom you can gather data. Of course, there are already existing documents and everything, which you can also go through. So various. Okay, okay guys, am I audible again? Okay guys, am I audible again?
Yes, go on.
Sorry, I lost my connection.
Until you said it's questionnaire answers and all. Until that we heard, but after that
Oh,
nothing.
did you hear about the legal, political, economic?
No,
That is not
no,
there, right?
no,
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
no, no.
Okay, thanks. Maybe I can repeat. Yeah. So, okay. When we talk of, say, data gathering, right? The data can be gathered from multiple sources. One basically is from the people who chartered this project. And chartering the people who chartered the project, basically it's a sponsor or his team. That could be the board, the company's board of directors. Am I audible still, guys?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, about.
Okay.
Screen not visible.
I'll share my
And
screen.
the screen is not showing.
Yes, yes.
I will share my screen. One moment. Yeah. Since the recording is going on, my laptop has become slow, and hold on, screen sharing may take some time. Let's continue, and when the screen gets shared, it's okay. So one moment. Is my screen visible?
No bone.
Okay, now it should be. So see, the sponsors, there could be multiple people who are basically leading the project. The sponsor can have his own screen. Can you put yourself on mute? Sorry. Yeah. So even if there are multiple people technically who are sponsoring the project, one of them will take the lead and call himself or herself the sponsor responsible for signing the approval, signing the charter and everything. So as part of data gathering, you will basically be talking to these very people who committed the who commissioned the project. The project could be commissioned for any purpose. It could be for political reasons, for business reasons, financial reasons, like economic or environmental reasons, social reasons, or CSR purposes, technological reasons. It could be for any reason. But when for whatever reason the project is commissioned, the sponsors really know at a high level what basically should the project be doing, because it's not without reason as a project is started. So the first people you should be talking to is a sponsor and his team, and you collect data from them. You also use the project's enterprise environmental factors, the company culture and everything, policies, procedures. You look at the OPAs, past projects, all these docs. See, they're not mentioned here, but technically whether they're all how to say covered under data gathering. Through various means, sources, you will gather data that will basically help you define this high level information that you are marking in the project. Even the high level risks, where do these things come from? The high level risks, see, they would have got a contract and they would have acquired a project, and now they're chartering the project, saying this is the high level information that the project should satisfy. Where does this information come from? It comes from this data that you gather. So it's not a, say they have a contract and everything is clear and they charter a project. There are many things. See, chart acquiring a project, acquisition of the project only talks of one level of the project, but a project is basically all about executing it, right? Delivering what is committed in the acquisition. So converting all the promises that are made to the customer during the acquisition phase, going good on the commitment, delivering the commitment, all these things are coming into life through the project charter, because the contract may say in 2 years time I will deliver you this new technological advance. Yes, but how will you deliver it? Whether you'll take 2 years or you'll do it in 1.5 years, the remaining 6 months you have basically for as a buffer. Where does all this information get stored? It is in the project charter. You basically write these things. So from data gathering, you talk to multiple people, you refer multiple documentation, you refer the contract, you refer quite a lot of these things, and you use them actually to mark the high level information that you see in the project charter. Meetings, yes.
When,
Interpersonal skills, yes.
when this actually the project charter comes as the output. So this data gathering actually, who will be the responsible person? It is not being a project manager is not there, right?
I told you, right? Though the project manager theoretically does not exist till the project charter is signed, because in the project charter only the PM is named. It's not really the case. The project manager is already known. They would be the potential, the probable
Okay.
project manager in the future will be working. And usually the sponsor also has his own team, her own team. And many organizations have so we have market research teams. We have, see, whenever a project is commissioned or is being commissioned via a project charter, right, after acquiring, right, after having the contract from the customer and everything, there is already a team that has been working on it. This team, which is answerable to the sponsor, that team does this all this work. The future
Okay.
project manager could be a part of this team also.
Okay. Got it.
Beautiful. Now, meetings.
Bhuvan, one minute.
Yeah.
What do you call the team as?
There is no
I,
name for the team. There is no particular name for the team.
okay, okay,
PMBOK
okay.
doesn't give a name to
Mm,
the team.
mm,
In some organizations, for example, there is this market research team that
okay.
gathers data about how what new technological advance the product should satisfy. How is the product doing in the market? They also call it as product management team. There are different teams, PRM team. There are different names. But
Okay,
when I
okay.
say a team, it's not a clearly defined team. It is all the set of people who work on during acquiring the project, identifying the market potential of the project. All these things, the team is already working before the project starts. So that's a group
Okay.
of team. So now there are interpersonal and team skills. You will see as we go forward, there are lots of interpersonal and team skills that you will be going through. You'll be seeing, say, for example, negotiation is one, requirements elicitation, even that's a skill basically that is very much important, because there are times when the information that's available is ambiguous, and not just in agile environments, even traditional project environments, information is very ambiguous. So you really need the skills where you'll be able to talk to people, elicit the requirements out of their mouth. Interpersonal and your communication skills, for example, how well you are able to understand the pulse of the people, how well you are able to say understand what is needed beyond what the customer states. All these things are very important. And sometimes interpersonal skills are needed to make the project charter to resolve conflicts. Bhuvan, there is no project team itself, there is no project manager named. Where from conflicts come? Conflicts can come in establishing the high level objectives of the project itself. So whenever you are, see, sometimes there could be different people in the board who have basically, one moment, I have to admit people from the lobby. Yeah, I don't know, somehow because of the network that got cut, right? Somehow, yeah, one moment, one moment. What I'm doing is I get out of my other call, just a moment, and rejoin. Okay, because I'm logged into a second screen that allows me to enter people directly. So, okay, now it's done. Otherwise, people will be waiting in the lobby unnecessarily. So, now it's done. So, now there could be conflicts among the team member, among the sponsor themselves. That basically means, imagine you're marking high level expectations, high level stakeholders. There could be risks that are identified at a high level. Imagine the people, the person or persons who are basically helping the sponsor write the project charter should be able to across negotiate with multiple stakeholders basically, who sometimes are identified, sometimes are yet to be identified, in order uh, that the conflicts are resolved and contradictory or competing expectations of the management are taken care of in the project charter. Because sometimes, just because the project is commissioned or acquired doesn't mean that everything is smooth. Each of the stakeholders may have different ways of interpreting the requirements, different ways of implementing or realizing the high level goals and objectives of the project. So these negotiation skills, these interpersonal skills and everything, right, diplomacy and all those things are very much needed, because the sponsor will not be sitting and writing the project charter. So what if you are writing it and you do not have any formal authority, but you'll have to negotiate with senior management? You have to talk to sometimes the sponsor himself, who may not be aware of certain things, be it technologies and all these things. Sometimes they may also name some technologies to be used. What if there is no solid footing for this expectation? So there could be quite a lot of things. I've only named a few of them. There are quite a lot of things that can how to say, lead to a conflict in the project, and these have to be negotiated, and the project charter should contain such expectations that are not contradicting one another. So these are various reasons why interpersonal and team skills are needed. Then, talking about the stakeholders. And now identifying stakeholders is the only other process that is part of the initiating process group. So here also expert judgment. And expert judgment is used because the experts can say exactly which stakeholders could be identified. For example, they can point out, they say, hey, you know what, this project needs a technology for which we need expertise in some fields. Where to talk to? They may not be able to pinpoint or point fingers to the exact names, but they can recommend to us, to the project manager, because by now the charter is made and we have a project manager. The experts can basically point fingers in the right direction to the right groups of people where the project manager can look for and identify stakeholders. Project manager will not say, "Hey, go and have Sandeep as a stakeholder, have Sajeev as a stakeholder, have Lakshmi, say Sona or Avinash." All these names I'm seeing on the screen. All this, no, they'll not. They will not be able to. They will not be saying these. They will be basically telling you what, from their experience and former proper expertise, they think could be a good group of stakeholders or where you can look at. So this gives you a very good starting point to identify the stakeholders, because usually when you don't have any information, you just need somewhere to start. Expert judgment is usually the best tool. Experts point in the right direction and set you on the right path where you can acquire more information. Similarly, data gathering, data analysis, data representation, for example. Data representation could be in various visual forms, making, for example, uh, we have, see, data is gathered. That means you go to the right sample set inside the population. You identify, for example, what is relevant data and what is not important. You sort all these things out. Then whatever data you got, you analyze. For example, which stakeholders are really, how to say, having a good impact, positive, negative, whatever impact on the project, all these things. And representing, for example, you have, okay, you will see this these techniques even later, for example, in stakeholder management, things like making a stakeholder register, how to make a stakeholder register, how to for example, make stakeholder engagement, how to analyze stakeholder engagement, and all those things. In some form, these are also done now, because the output, one the biggest output of identifying stakeholders, this particular process, is a list of stakeholders with a very high level information on their characteristics, their expectations, their requirements, and everything. This document is called the stakeholder register. And when you are making the stakeholder register, you will be basically using not only some plain techniques like meetings, but also you will be using various, let me say, you'll be identifying not only the names of the stakeholders, you also be identifying their characteristics and the levels of engagement. You would have seen in stakeholder management, when we did this a few weeks back, you would have seen this power interest grid. Power interest grid is a very good example of how to analyze and represent the data. And all of you know, in a power interest grid, guys, I told you I don't have any slides. So I know it will be amazing if I can also have supporting documents where I show you a sample stakeholder register, I show you the drawing a diagram of the power interest grid and all those things. But I explored before this session, I explored all those options how to, but taking into account the not so good network connectivity and resources that I have at my disposal, if I accumulate all those documents, right, the examples and everything side by side, and switch the windows, I know it's going to take a huge toll on the resources. So pardon me, I'm not going to show all those things separately. I'm going to stick to this whatever is being displayed, Ricardo Vargas process flow, and I'm just going to discuss it. I hope okay with you. And if you find it difficult to understand, basically, it will be nice if you can show offline. Maybe I can also share on the WhatsApp group some samples of whatever I discuss. So I will not be switching windows to show those power interest grid, for example, all those things. So pardon me. I'm just ensuring the resources are properly utilized. I hope this is okay with you guys. Any comments you have, you can let me know. So, uh, any comments? Any views? I hope it's okay.
Fine, Bhuvan.
Yeah. So in the power interest grid, for example, you power map, for example, what is the level of interest the stakeholder may have, how much he or she is interested in the success or failure of the project. On the power side, you say how much power he or she has in influencing the project, basically in killing the project or in helping you. Can they help you, or they are simply powerless, they can't do anything? Can they kill the project? All these things, it could be formal power, it could be informal power, anything. So you map this power interest grid, and accordingly you take action. For example, low power low interest means you just monitor them. Low in power but high interest, you keep them informed. And say high power low interest, these are the people, for example, in your organization where see, there could be a top management who can have tens and twenties or hundreds of projects actually under them. Your particular project they're not very much interested in, but they have the power to kill your project, how to handle them. And then high power high interest, these are the people whom you engage very closely, your customers, maybe your immediate boss, and all these things. So this is basically what you do. And after identifying what is the power and interest of each of the stakeholder, each groups of stakeholders, you also do something called like a stakeholder engagement assessment matrix. That means there are 5 levels of engagement, right? You talk of whether they are aware, or some stakeholders may be unaware that they are stakeholders. Then there may be resistant stakeholders who do not want your project to succeed. There may be neutral stakeholders who simply don't care. Yeah, they know they are aware, but unless you ask, they will not do anything. Then there are for example, supporting stakeholders. I don't remember anyone knows what are the five the thing. There are supporting. One moment, let me check if I have this information elsewhere. Just a moment. Just a moment, guys. I am just trying to see. Can someone tell me what are the other 2 levels? There's one unaware, then resistant, then neutral, then what we have then supporting, maybe anyone, because we had this stakeholder session sometime back. Anyone? Guys? Hmm? Yeah, unaware is one, resistant is one, supportive, yeah, and leading.
Leading, yeah.
Leading is one. So supporting stakeholders have their interest at heart, but you know what, they will not proactively go and advocate for your project. Leading stakeholders basically are those who will pull you. Supporting stakeholders, sometimes you have to push them yourself, but leading stakeholders will pull you. So these are the various levels of engagement. And when you are, how to say, assessing what kind of stakeholders each person is, when you're making a stakeholder register, you will also, to a good extent, you will also list today what is the current level of engagement, and what is the desired level of engagement tomorrow, where you want them to be. So all these things. So a stakeholder register, please understand, it is not just a list of all the stakeholders. It's not a telephone directory. Basically, it also has quite a lot of information about your stakeholders, their power, influence level, interest level, what are their how to say requirements, expectations, all these levels of engagement, everything. So together, all this information, a first level of all this information comes in the stakeholder register, which is basically the output of the identify stakeholders process. So this is basically the initiating phase. You have any questions about the tools and techniques from the initiating phase? Anyone? Anyone? No?
We also have stakeholder mapping, right, Bhuvan, which we would start with.
What do you mean by mapping?
Basically, to kind of, their interest levels, or, I mean,
Yeah.
what level they are
That's the
currently
PI
in.
grid. That's the PI grid. You have the power and interest. That's the one. Power and one moment. I Yeah. So the power and interest levels. So basically, low power, low interest, you monitor them. Low power, high interest, you keep them informed. High power, low interest is keeping them satisfied. High power, high interest is you monitor them very closely. You manage them very closely. So
Hmm.
Some of the other kinds of mapping, you can have stakeholder cube, salience model, where you list not only the power interest, you also see the
Right.
urgency, legitimacy
Thanks.
levels, and all those things. Yeah. So in essence, basically in initiating phase, you're defined at a high level, you're given a map of the project, what is the project all about, and you've done the most important thing, which is identifying different people who can help you with starting the project up. And you list various characteristics of them, their interests and their expectations, requirements, and everything. So this in essence is the set of tools and techniques, why you use the tools and techniques in the initiation phase. Then we go to the planning phase. So in the planning phase, let me see, let me just zoom it out for you. One minute. Just verify this here. All right. So in the planning phase, basically, you have all the tools and techniques that basically define at least the first level, version 0 of all your plans, and not even just your plans, the subsidiary plans that make up the overall project management plan, but also some other things that help in the planning, not just the project management plan, not the schedule management plan, scope management plan, but also various planning elements. For example, you have the work breakdown structure, you have the requirements documentation, you have the scope statement, then you have the WBS dictionary, then you have schedule, and before schedule you have the list of activities, various characteristics of these activities, sequence of the activities, and everything, all of them leading up to the schedule. And then you have estimations, for example, how you estimate the durations, how you estimate the costs, how you estimate the resources, resource requirements, all these things. Plus also you have a list of various other plans, for example, risk management plan, for example. Yeah, as you see here, there are quite a lot of plans that you do know. There are some 9 subsidiary plans, all of which together in integration management, you bring them together to make one complete project management plan. So there are lots of tools and techniques that basically help you to make these plans per se and the supporting documents that form part of your overall project plan. So this is something we will look at now. So let's start with the first of all, basically scope management. We will do this tools and techniques in multiple sessions. So today we will try to cover scope, schedule, and cost in the remaining 45 minutes, and the rest of them we can start next week. So scope. When you talk of scope, what you do first, you start with for those. So these sessions, when you're discussing tools and techniques, will also be helpful for you to have a recap about the various processes, because you already would have seen these things in your other sessions. It will be a recap of the what each process does. So in scope management, basically that is where you define what you are going to do in the project. In schedule, you'll be talking about by when you have to finish or how long you will need to do whatever you have to do. And then in cost management, you will be, one moment, it's too loud here. Sorry. Yeah. So, and then in cost management, how much it costs basically to do the project. One moment, guys. One moment. It's too loud. Sorry, guys. It was a bit loud in the back end. So, in scope management, when you are defining what the project will be doing, you do it in steps, as you know. You don't immediately define what your project will do. And now I want you to answer this question: who defines what will be done in the project? A, the customer; B, the project sponsor; C, your immediate manager; D, the project manager. So who defines it? The project manager. For some of you who are new to this, you may be asking, hey Bhuvan, is it not the customer who defines what is being done in the project? Actually, no. The customer does not tell you what should be done in the project. The customer only can say what he or she needs for his business. The customer can state the problem they want you to solve, or the opportunity they want your help to leverage. They can even tell you what the product could be about. One level further, they can describe the product to you. But at the end of the day, you, the organization, the project team, the project manager is the one who basically defines the actual product that will solve the problem of the customer, or that will help the customer to leverage an opportunity. So you basically start with the customer's needs, that is in the collect requirements. And so basically in planning, every knowledge area has a planning process, and in that you basically define how you will conduct that knowledge area. That's it. So plan scope management means how you will conduct scope management. Plan schedule management means how you will conduct schedule management. That's it. So and the output of each of these process will be the respective knowledge areas plans. So now in scope, in collecting requirements, basically you talk about what the customer's pain areas are, what his problems or opportunities are, and what the customer's requirements are, both explicitly stated requirements and implicit requirements. Also, you capture. You have various tools. For example, some of them are not stated. You have the voice of customer, the requirements elicitation techniques, you call it, right? So when you're talking of requirements elicitation techniques, you will be, one moment. I will see if I can share another screen just for your help, maybe because sometimes, one moment, sometimes it may help. Okay, just a minute. Because some of these, it may help you actually if, one moment. I think, just a moment, guys. Yeah, I may have to share another screen. Let me see if it is really possible for me to share my other screen. Then in that case, you'll be able to. Let me see. Okay. So what you do first basically in scope management is you collect all the explicit and implicit requirements from various stakeholders. To know who the stakeholders are, you must have identified the stakeholders first. So not only the customer, to multiple, because the customer may state what he or she needs, but what exactly should be addressed in the project. I'm not saying what exactly should be done in the project, but what exactly should be addressed in the project. These are two different things. So requirements and scope, the difference is requirements is basically a description of the product, what the product should contain, what the product's characteristics are. That is requirements. Scope, is what your project will do. These are the boundaries. Within this boundary, everything that is within the boundary, I will do in the project. Everything outside this boundary, I will not do. I will exclude. These are the exclusions from the projects. So basically, these are the this is the basic difference between requirements and scope. And when you are collecting the requirements, of course you have to talk to the right stakeholders. Customer gives you what his problem is, but only the experts basically will be able to tell you, in your enthusiasm, in your endeavor basically to create a product that satisfies these requirements, or there are some other implicit hidden requirements that also have to be satisfied, which the customer will never state and need not state. So this is why expert judgment is used. One technique here that is not seen earlier is a context diagram. Let me try to, one moment. I am trying to share my other screen. Just a minute. Sorry, actually, the organization of this session is a bit clumsy and not as efficient as the previous sessions. Apologies, because uh, I didn't prepare any slides for this. I was just enthusiastic to do it. And just a moment. I will try to share my screen. Let me know actually if you're able to see my other screen. So can you see my other screen, guys?
Yeah.
So context diagram. So context diagram basically is one where basically you connect. Wow, 1 second. That's okay. where you connect different, it could be use cases, it could be different, how to say, functions basically, that are using this system, that are it could be anything. It could be a set of all the people who are using the system, end users. It could be a set of all the teams or people or groups of people who will be taking part in developing this system. So who provides inputs to develop the system, who uses the outputs of the system, all these things to set the bigger context in which the system operates. That's the context diagram as you're seeing here. If it's a chemical tracking system, you say which subsystems or which set of users, which entities basically feed in data or inputs to the system, or which take data out of the system. All these things are listed, and this is basically a context diagram. And prototypes, prototype is something that you use to fail fast and fail early. Imagine in agile world, all of you would know it, why we use a prototype. If you don't use a prototype, you would be getting the feedback much later when the time is very less, or so much money has been wasted already. So what you do is you do a smaller version of this product and a proof of concept, a smaller one, and then whatever feedback you get, accordingly you tailor your plan or your execution. One more important reason why you would use a prototype is the customer himself sometimes does not know how the product should appear. The customer comes to you with a set of requirements. I give those example. I have given this example in the past. Imagine in requirements engineering, right? Imagine you are walking into a TV showroom, and you are asked. The salesman asks you, "Sir, welcome. What you are looking for? I'm looking for a TV." And the salesman does not immediately sell you a TV. He asks you a set of questions. So the salesman is the project manager, and you, who is walking in to buy the TV, is the customer. And the salesman basically, of course, one of the first questions he asks is, "What's your budget?" But that's only to narrow down your options. But then the salesman asks more questions. He asks you, where are you going to put the TV in? In your bedroom or in your drawing room? Where exactly? Or is it an office location? And based on that, he gauges, he tries to understand what your need is. If you're asking for a 72-inch TV to put in your bedroom, which may be small, the experience may not be really great. So he may suggest, or if it is a second TV that you're looking for, you may not need a 72-inch TV unless you're going to put it in a hall. So he will try to see you as the customer will not. Sorry, guys, my kid is undergoing karate class in the back end, so you will hear some odd noises. Sorry. So basically, the project manager or the salesman in this case tries to elicit the requirements and needs. And sometimes the customers don't walk to you with a clear idea in their head. They will ask questions, they will basically give you suggestions, they will do everything. So in the end, they're collecting what the real requirements are. That means what the desired characteristics of this so-called product are. They are collecting that all the time. And this is basically the purpose of the collect requirements. And prototypes you do so that you show the customer, hey, we discussed so much, you gave me so much explicit requirements. On top of it, I added some more implicit requirements, the look and feel you never told me. I have given you a look and feel. And then he will say, or it could be wireframes, for example, when you're designing a software, a tool, a website, for example. You say, you know what, I thought this would be great in a green color or a red color, but then now I realize it has to be gray. Because when I'm seeing the prototype, right, I understand, because some of these things requirements will not be clear unless you see the product. But by the time you do the product, it will be too late. That's why you do prototypes. So with all these tools and techniques, the output you get
So,
is,
Bhuvan,
yeah,
Bhuvan,
yes.
one query. So, this context example, which is prototype, is it related to risk enhancement kind of things? Like, same way we can correlate?
We can use the same technique for risk also, because believe me, uh, the same tool and technique you can use for any purpose, because that's the idea. Because PMBOK is basically just a framework. Okay, it's a set of best practices. You basically can tailor the processes, the tools and techniques for any purpose you need. Here you're using it for identifying, collecting the requirements and making sense of the requirements. In context diagram, you're basically understanding the requirements better by, and you're trying to elicit more requirements. When you say, hey, you know what, the chemist, I don't see too many paths between the chemist and their chemical tracking system. Why will the what will a chemist have to do? How can a chemist interact with the system? You remember use case diagrams and everything? So similarly, so you will be trying to use these tools and techniques to identify even more requirements and to make sense of the requirements to ensure that you have not missed anything. So is this clear? Yeah. So then, uh, yeah, yes, please.
Yeah, it's fine, Boom.
Okay, beautiful. So now, when you after you have collected the requirements, you are going to take these requirements, explicit, implicit, everything, bundle them up in a context, and then you are going to say, to satisfy the characteristics of the product that I have just got, which is a set of all the requirements, I will have to do some work in the project. If I do this work, I will be satisfying these requirements. So that work you do to create the product will be the scope of the project. Sometimes you will say, I can satisfy these characteristics of the project, these requirements, all these things without even doing certain work. It's okay. Sometimes you will also say, you know what, I've collected these requirements, but I do not have to basically satisfy all the requirements for some purpose, because everything that the customer asks need not be done in the project, because scope is not the only thing in your project. You also have time, you have cost. So sometimes you will have various alternate approaches. You will say, you say, to arrive at the same product characteristics or requirements, to satisfy the same set of requirements, I have multiple alternate approaches. I have to just make a decision based on technical feasibility, based on the time available to me, based on the budget available to me, based on the risks. And I should not be introducing a new risk by trying to do this, all these things, various things, and then you will make a decision and you will say, I will do this in the project, I will not do this. This I will do, I will not do. You draw a boundary between them. That basically is the scope. So sometimes you have to take decisions. There are various kinds of decisions you'll be making as a team. One could be, see, decision making is a tool and technique in many places. Collect requirements, define scope, wherever, in lots of places. Some of the kinds of techniques that PMBOK talks of decision making. One is called unitary or dictatorial decision making, where either you as a project manager or an expert says this is how it should be done, no arguments. Sometimes it's really important, because you have to remember, we don't run, it's not democracy. You are not running a charity. The expert, if he's the only person who can make a decision on it, why not? If you as a project manager has more information than the others, you know actually what will make sense in doing this project or not. Why not? You make the decision in a dictatorial manner. It's okay. Dictatorial does not mean being rude or not taking others' opinions, not being inclusive. Dictatorial also means it's a unitary decision making, where one person makes a decision because he or she knows all the things that are needed. Then there can be consensus, where everyone agrees. So it is unanimous, for example, everyone agrees to that. Sometimes there could be a majority means 50% plus 1. Sometimes there could be a plurality. Imagine there are 100 people, they vote, and how do they vote? 40, 30, 30. So there is majority, no one got 50%, no one choice got 50%, but 40% is the highest. So this is called a plurality. So these are PMP exam questions. So these are the different kinds of decision making. Of course, product analysis. Product analysis basically means you take an existing product or existing version of the product or past version of the product. Imagine you already have this product in the market, and you want to, your project is to modify or enhance this project in some sense. You take the product and you do similar to a reverse engineering or something. You try to understand this product. You take up this product and you understand how it looks, how it is used in the real environment, what is the environment in which this product will be employed or deployed in the future. You do this analysis all around the real product itself. So that is what is called as a product analysis. yes, sometimes when you're doing the second version of a product, you can use the first version of the product as an example or to do analysis. Sometimes you can use models. When you don't have the real product, you can use models. And prototypes, for example, also, if the prototypes are representative of the product, you can take that also. So product analysis is where, or even the documents of the, not the real product, but also the documents of the product, the specifications you can take. So all the info, the product itself or its specifications, you take these things and you do an analysis to understand how this product will look like, how this product will be deployed, all these things. So you know, in spite of whatever requirements you are having, what is the exact work you should do so that you bring these requirements to life, that can be understood from this product analysis. By doing all this, what is your output? It is your project scope statement. Inside that, you have also the product scope also. How will the product look like? What will the product be? And all those things. Plus, what will be the project activities be? So at high level, so this is basically the project scope statement. So finally, in creating WBS, you take up this product, this scope, which is still more like a dough, nah? Like you make in a chapati or something. It's still a dough. I will tell you, the requirement is I am hungry and I need to be fed, but I don't like rice. So your scope will be to satisfy hunger, I have to make food. Excluded from the food is rice items. Included in the food is anything that is not rice, maybe more specifically roti items. And when you are making, or it could be pasta or anything. And simply, how to say, saying I will make roti is not enough. That is the scope. In the WBS, you will say the roti means roti food. If I am making, I'll be making roti, I'll be making sabji, I'll be preparing. In fact, I'll be also collecting or buying some achar, some curd if you want. Now, for those of you paratha lovers, all these things. So, or to make paratha and everything, I first need to get some vegetables, or for example, potato and all these things and everything. I need to mash the potato. At a high level, I need to have potato puree. Such kinds of things, right? You are breaking down your high level scope in a very structured manner. So, your breaking work breakdown structure, it's a very structured manner breakdown of the high level work that you're having, so that it's done in a very hierarchical fashion. So the main technique here that's used is decomposition. Decomposition means you are breaking down at some level whatever work you have into lower simpler levels with multiple, with some intentions. What are those intentions? First, by breaking down, you are enabling that work to be understood better, to be visualized better. It can be allotted to different teams. You cannot allot the entire work to see at home. Moms and wives, basically, they are amazing. They do the entire scope themselves without any support. But in a real project, everything cannot be done by one person. It has to be done by a team. So you are, by breaking down, you are making sure that the work is broken down in an understandable form and could be given. Different parts of the work need different expertises that can be given to different teams, each of whom has a core competence. Very importantly, the overall budget of the project, which you will define later, that you will basically apportion into what you call as control accounts. By allotting the control accounts, you are ensuring that the overall budget plan for the project is basically split into, one moment guys, a bit loud in the background. Yeah. So by breaking down this work, you are ensuring that the overall budget can also be accounted for and tracked. Imagine you are making a table, a dining table. You cannot, the entire budget for making the dining table is like 10,000 rupees. But by saying the legs of the table, somebody will make, I will give 500 or 1,000, 2,000 rupees for that. For making the top of the table, another 3,000. For painting, I will give, that is one activity in the WBS. I will allot another 2,000. You're able to track where this budget is spent and to forecast also how much money will be spent, will be needed, and all those. So this is the purpose of having a control account, and a control account is enabled because you have created a work breakdown structure where the work is split from a higher level into a lower level, and you are apportioning this work to different teams or different groups of people. So this is basically what decomposition is. And there are some rules how you can make a WBS. Some of the rules I just told you now. Some other rules are basically you will make sure you follow the 8 to 80 rule. 8 to 80 rule means what? Each work package. The work package is the bottommost level of the work breakdown structure. A work package is something that can be given to a person or a group of people so that you can track at that level and you don't have to track at a higher level. And a work package should be a minimum 8 hours in duration, which is 1 day, or 80 hours, which is 2 weeks, 10 days. It should be between 8 to 80. Don't decompose it to a further level below 8 hours or at a very high level above 80 hours. And then there is a 100% rule. 100% rule means when you roll up, for example, the work across all the bottommost levels of this WBS, which is basically the work breakdown set of work packages, when you keep rolling them up, the sum of all the activities that basically you are doing, the sum of all the activities that you have described you are doing basically, or how to say, at the lowermost level when you're doing the uh, when you're defining the work packages, if you add up all the work defined in these work packages and roll it up, the sum of all this should equate the total work. That means there should be no missing work from the overall scope that is not yet defined in the work packages, and there should not be more work than that is defined in the work packages which is not in the scope. So these are some of the rules that you need to follow when you're decomposing a your scope into a hierarchical structure, which is a work breakdown structure. So let me try to share back my other screen because okay, because some of these other tools and techniques what you see here are not from planning, they are from monitoring and controlling. Yeah, some other techniques. One moment, let me see if you have it here, guys. Just a moment. Any questions? Please stop me. Am I still audible, guys? I'm still online.
Yes, Bhuvan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
actually, this session may appear a bit dry or too much information. It will go to two extremes. One is it's a lecture, dry, boring. On the other extreme, simply too much information. Please pardon me. The aim of this particular sub series on tools and techniques, it's not just to teach you all the tools and techniques in full blown. That will happen in the full actual knowledge area sessions that you have once in a while. Here, I'm just trying to make sure we touch every tools and technique that is mentioned in PMBOK, and some of them are generic, we don't talk too much about it. Some of them you may have wrong interpretation about them or you may not know clearly, so that I'm giving you a chance where we touch upon this, with which you can ask questions and clarify your doubts. So there are some other things, for example, like brainstorming and affinity diagrams. So please understand, this brainstorming technique you will see later in other for example one moment. You will see in other knowledge areas and also in other process groups also. But understand one thing: when you are doing a brainstorming, the keyword there is quality. Sorry, it's quantity, not quality. In brainstorming, you don't judge, you don't comment or categorize ideas, you don't ask questions unless they are towards ideating more or towards generating more ideas. You are not going to ask critical questions about why do you think this is an idea, this is a requirement. For example, that's one data gathering technique. Brainstorming is one data gathering technique.
Bhuvan, just one question. When it comes to mind mapping, right? Idea and mind mapping. I mean, that also is trying to generate a lot of these ideas, right? So, how is it different from
I'll tell you. I'll tell
brainstorming?
you. I'll tell you. In brainstorming, you just collect as many ideas. The
Yep.
keyword is many, quantity, without making any connections or associations. Of course, it will be nice if you can do the thinking in a guided way. There will be moderators even in a brainstorming session, but the purpose of these moderators in a brainstorming session is mainly to ensure that there are no arguments or discussions. We don't waste time on analyzing the ideas rather than collecting the ideas. And in brainstorming, you gather all the ideas to whatever extent you can categorize without effort. You can do it, but generally that's not your target there. In mind mapping, you start with a central idea and then you branch out into each of the subcategories. See here, each of the subcategories, and you do your thinking in a slightly guided manner. Unlike in brainstorming, you also look slightly at the quality of the ideas. So as you branch out, you go to the sub themes of the idea from the central idea that's listed at the center, and so that you can see associations between different ideas or between different idea groups. It uses the premise the brain works better when it can associate things. So your brain can think better. Sometimes people, even during brainstorming sessions, they use mind maps, but it's not a good idea. For your own individual purpose, you can use mind maps, but in a brainstorming session, the idea is to gather as much data and information as possible without judging. In a mind map, you basically do some sort of structure to it, which you don't do in a brainstorming session. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
And then there is something called affinity diagram, where you basically take this idea that you got in a brainstorming and then you categorize them under different headings or categories. That is called an affinity diagram. Affinity means relationship. So you are putting different headings. So whatever data you got in brainstorming, you are consolidating under different categories so that you are able to look at commonalities, differences, and you can make some action out of this. So this is basically an affinity diagram. Then also some other kinds of data gathering techniques. You have something called focus groups. Focus group means you in your when you're collecting the requirements, basically you have different functions or departments. For example, different groups of people with different expertise, different work areas who can give. So what you do is these are called focus groups. Imagine you collect all the purchasing team guys into one meeting, only purchasing team guys. You collect only sales team, you get only the software guys, database guys. You only get, for example, or it could be department by department, or it could be, for example, people who worked in the previous projects. The For example, only them you can collect. You don't collect all the people in one area. Rather, you focus your attention on select groups of people who can bring in their own experience and expertise, and then you moderate discussions. This is called a focus group. Nominal group technique, it's same. You take up the information from whatever you collected, the quantity, right, in brainstorming, and then you prioritize this so that you can do a second level of brainstorming. How can you do this prioritization? You rank, you do voting, you give ranks, you prioritize. You know what, in my 1 hour brainstorming session I gathered some 1,000 ideas. Now I want to do second level of brainstorming on ideas that are really prioritized. So you do voting and all categorization, everything you do, and then you go for a next level of brainstorming only on the prioritized ideas. So this kind of prioritizing, that technique we use, that by voting and everything, that is called a nominal group technique. So these may not be directly listed, this thing, but exam sometimes they may ask you what are the different data gathering techniques and data analysis techniques. So this is basically about scope management. I thought we could cover schedule and cost, but I'm already looking at the time. We have 10 more minutes left. So what we will do is we will, one moment. I will probably, okay. Some other techniques that you use basically is, in requirements engineering, there is something called 3 C's of requirements. A requirement should be complete, correct, and consistent. That's one thing. Then similar to rolling wave planning, you also have progressive elaboration. That means when you're collecting the initial set of requirements, you basically have only some information, but then you elaborate this in more detail as you go through the various phases of the project. This is progressive elaboration. So these are something. So in this tools and techniques session, we are looking at the major tools and techniques. We are looking at some of the related techniques which are outside this list. We are also looking at some outputs where applicable. So here we have finished the planning related tools and techniques in scope management. I'm just looking at something we can finish in schedule also today itself. Now, some of these things are very big, like schedule network analysis, resource optimization, everything that we can look in a separate session next week. So yeah, you have any questions, guys, for the remaining 10 minutes? What I would do is, so first of all, again, apologies if the session was very dry. But anyway, my aim in this sub-series is, again, I'm repeating, is to make sure we touch upon every single tool and technique in a very organized way. So if you guys thought you knew some tool and technique but had a wrong understanding of it, or you never understood that, so this is the place where you say, hey, Bowen, you know what? This is not my idea. So, or I have not understood. Can you explain? So we give all of us an opportunity to, without missing, touch every tool and technique so that we can have a discussion on selected tools and techniques that we need. So I'm going to use this record of Vargas. I will just shift the screen. I'm very sorry. I think I will shift to the other screen. Just a minute. Okay, stop sharing. Okay, I basically will share my screen again. So any questions, guys, in the remaining 10 minutes? Because next week what we will do is we will do the remaining planning tools and techniques, schedule, cost, risk, analysis.
Bhuvan, I have a question. So when it comes to scope and schedule, right? So I mean, looking at it individually, like to a certain extent, right? What happens in scope management or schedule is something that is kind of very straightforward. But then in reality, right? So there is an overlap, right, between scope and schedule when these processes would happen, right? So can you just probably touch upon that, or would you be doing that in some of these sessions? Because I see some of the questions that even from an understanding point of view, do you how do you progress, right? So what are the different steps? You prepare the WBS dictionary, what do you do next after this, and all those kind of questions, right? So anything that we can
we can do that. My
probably
my
think of.
recommendation my recommendation is we can do it in a couple of ways. One is you please bring some questions, some sample questions that stumped you
Mm.
to these sessions. Okay,
Okay.
you can bring some sample questions that stumped you so that we can discuss in detail. Or
Mm.
another thing is I can take up in every session. I can take up one, because the point is, anyway, that was the reason why I started this PMP refresher session.
Mm.
If you remember, the first session was on earned value management, just one time, not entire cost management. Those of you who are new, right, who did not attend earlier sessions, many of them asked, Bhuvan, can you do an entire knowledge area? Yes, we did two such knowledge areas, risk and stakeholder management, also in the past. That is one thing. Crisply in 1 hour we can do the entire knowledge area, but then that will go on quantity. We will not be able to concentrate on individual topics. Another kind of thing we can do is, like we did earn value management, how to build a schedule, all these things. So by the way, if you're guys, who, if you're not aware, please go to the YouTube channel. There you have all these videos already. So how to, the small parts, only earn value management, only schedule, like that we can also take up. How to build a work breakdown structure could also be one topic we can do for 40 minutes or something like that with question and answer. We can do that also. So two ways. But so if you're going to do an entire knowledge area, you will not be able to cover all these things. But if we concentrate only on that particular thing, we can do a session. So it's left to you.
I was thinking more from a sequence perspective, Bhuvan. Like in the
What flows?
sense,
You see this.
yeah.
Can you see here? Basically, I will zoom out. So if you see, this is exactly also a way what flows where. If you see what is used where and what is related to where and everything, you can see quite a lot. If you see here, develop project management plan, here all the arrow marks lead in and out. So this kind of interaction, that's what you mean, right?
Hmm.
So this is something. So what I will do is I will also share with you on our WhatsApp group. One moment. One moment. I am in chat window. I am just putting something. uh, I'm putting the links. Okay, sorry. Okay, So if you want to know when you start with the project charter, what is the first thing that you do? What you maybe one session we can do it, but then we in those sessions, please remember we cannot basically discuss things in detail. We can only look at the high level flow. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, and that's what I was looking at, like probably not going in detail, but then, from a high level, from after one step, what is the next immediately, after probably defining the scope, what is the next step we can do and things like that. So yeah, high level is something I was looking for, but then yeah,
We can do
open
that.
to, yeah.
We can do that. We can do that also in one session, in 1 hour. We can look at the high level sequence as you
Hmm.
start with project charter, identify stakeholders, how you go, and maybe and wherever time permits, we can touch go little deep in depth into some areas.
Yeah,
We can do that.
yeah, I think that's helpful. Thanks.
No issues. And so those of you who are new, actually, please, I have typed the link in the chat box for the channel. You can visit all the previous videos are there, and WhatsApp group link is here. Basically, I'm also typing that. So if you're wondering what is that WhatsApp group I'm talking of, this is a WhatsApp group. You can join here. So this is a WhatsApp group link. So there we discuss what will be the next session topic, and you all suggest. So this basically, in a sense, is the first one in the series. So next week we can either do the second part of this, or we can do another topic also as a break. So any other questions, guys? I know this was not in the same hip and everything, the flow that we have in the other previous sessions. Apologies for that, but sometimes we have to do such dry sessions also, because in fact I'll tell you very crisply why actually this session idea came up. Not just in the WhatsApp group, also personally, many of you were repeatedly asking me certain questions, which led me to think, hey, these tools and techniques people think they know, but there are lots of tools and techniques which people walk past without getting deep. And in exam, when they get those questions, they think they always knew this, but suddenly they are stumped. Or sometimes they. How many of you know what a nominal group technique is till today? How many of you knew what a focus group was? These are techniques that are mentioned, but you walk past. You don't discuss that. Even I've seen in many PMP training sessions, people don't look into that. So that's the idea behind doing this. So it will be a bit dry. Please bear with us, but this is more of a knowledge session that will not be really interesting, more of a dry session. So bear with me. So any other questions you have? Any quick feedbacks about how we can improve this session?
Bhuvan, what is the main difference between resource smoothing and resource leveling?
We will see it in detail also in the next sessions. It's basically the same. Resource leveling is a way of smoothing the resources. See, resource leveling means if there are 5 people in the team, each of them is loaded in different to different levels. So in resource leveling, basically what you do is you change the allocation of work to these people in such a way that it is even. Sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not. What if they are experts in certain fields and only they can do the work? Or what if for example they are given work in such a way, because there is sequence to the work, you cannot do testing before development is done. So probably the testing guys are not loaded at all at the beginning and they're loaded heavily at the end. So sometimes you can't. That's the purpose of having multi skilled teams. But sometimes even if you take an individual, their loading may not be even across all the days. So what you do basically in resource leveling is make sure the loading of the people is to a good extent even. It is distributed or leveled across all the individuals in all the resources in the team. So smoothing is another word for it. Did you see this in another context somewhere?
Yes, because I understand the smoothing doesn't have any impact in critical path, but somehow in smoothing we can able to use the existing free float, everything from in the float, right?
Yeah,
We can able
yeah.
to manage the things. That's what I mean. But in leveling also, it impacts the critical path. But how we manage, that's what I have some doubt between
I'll tell you
things.
when it comes to critical path, generally you don't consider resources to start with. In critical chain method is where you consider all these buffers and everything. But then once you have leveled the resources, your schedule changes, because then you will see some activities have to be rescheduled or taken out of sequence. Sometimes the duration of doing the tasks changes and everything. All these things directly impact the critical path, definitely. And you will also see in critical chain also a lot where, for example, you concentrate on the constraints, on the interactions. Wherever there is a link between activities and everything, you concentrate on those interactions, on those links, so you make sure these links are strengthened. That's the theory of constraints. The chain is as strong as its weakest link, we call it, right? That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yep. So any other questions, guys? What I'll do is I will close the recording and then we can maybe carry on for a couple of minutes if necessary after that. Just a minute. And so you can see this recording also on YouTube. I will post this. I just hope everything comes out fine. And thanks a lot actually for joining this session and for viewing this.